me and Newbie doing Saturday calls until we landed on where we are today. Yeah, I don't know if we have slides, but this has been recorded, which is great. So HoaQ, we've been at this for a while. Here we go. What we do, community mission is to support and back folks who are building for Africa and the diaspora. And in these sessions, we bring people who are in the ecosystem, our founders, our operators, and who are contributors to the ecosystem, and we are here to hear from them. And today we have Caleb Maru. So Caleb, I think I've known you since 2012, right? 2022.
That's a lot. Yeah, 2012. Wow, you'd be one of my oldest friends.
2022, right?
Yeah.
And at this stage, I think you were maybe 2021 because you were entry level.
Yes.
And then you were doing the fund, which you're still doing.
Mm.
But when we spoke in January 2023, I don't know if you remember, you're telling me about Tech Safari and you want to go to writing. I'm like, my guy, why writing? But as we're speaking today, you have how many readers?
Yeah, so like subscribers to our newsletter, about 18,000, almost 19. Yeah. And post consistently on LinkedIn too. So pretty big audience there who can see me live right now. So yeah.
So well, let's go into an intro. Like, who are you? Where are you from? You have a weird accent that people don't really know where it's from. And just like a very brief summary of where you were maybe 10 years ago to where you are now.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Makes sense. Yes, I'm Caleb Maru. I am living in Nairobi, which is where we're shooting this. And also just a shout out to Launchpad Innovation Campus for having us in that space. Such a nice studio. And yeah, so living in Nairobi, I grew up in Australia. I was born there, spent most of my life there, but my family, and originally I'm from Ethiopia. It's Ethiopian diaspora. And I used to spend a lot of time going back and forth. And then one of my first jobs, I was working between Ethiopia and Australia in peace and security policy.
I'm not going to dive into it.
Which is like, I'll just put that out there. We don't need to talk about it. But anyway, like a bunch of events like made me realize I didn't want to be in that space, but I wanted to do something that was impactful. So that's when I started learning about tech. And along that ride, one of my friends started a company called Entry Level, which was just a pitch deck and an idea. And I was like, let me help you build this. That's how I joined that company and really helped scale it to, reaching, I guess, like thousands of learners, most of them on the continent. So Entry Level taught people how to get into tech jobs very quickly, like in a month. And
is it like old school?
Nah, more hands off. So the idea was like, can you teach someone, let's say you're at Stripe. Can I figure out what an associate product manager needs to be able to do, get their position description, and then work backwards and create a program that teaches someone those skills in a month.
In a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like portfolio driven. So like you have like a hard like portfolio, which is like, this is what I've done, rather than this is like what I know, which is one of the insights we had.
Okay.
So that had a lot of demand, and it sort of, we raised money from Australian VCs, but it just blew up in Nigeria.
Nigeria?
Yeah. I think around that time, like, and still today it's the biggest market, but around that time they were like, I think universities had just stopped, like had just closed down, or like, and people were on strike. And so a lot of learners like, where do I go to like learn to get into a job? So that was really interesting. And then I guess, that company scaled to like 25 people, we raised $2 million. And then from that experience, I was like, I've learned what I wanted to. Now I want to support other companies scale and do the same.
Okay.
And that's when I started my fund, Proximity Ventures.
Yes, we've done a couple of deals together.
Yes, we have.
Some battle scars.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I think my first
battle scars
startup death I experienced with you. Still haven't recouped the money on. Anyway,
we're not going to go into that today.
Nah, not going into that today. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've co-invested a bunch, I think, which is cool. And that was really cool. I think like we still invest out of that fund. So we do small checks where we try to find like just really strong founders tackling big markets. And the focus of that is like, it's very early stage, very much just learning, like trying to understand, like learn as much as we can.
And that's learning by doing.
100%. Yeah.
Like you're spending real, I'm going to use Australian dollars
to
invest in companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. and it's the best way to get skin in the game, I think.
Yep.
So that's been great. And then I guess along the journey, I realized I didn't know what I was doing. Like I had this like small fund, a bunch of people trust us with it, and I was like, I've not invested before. Like I have no investing experience. So I was like, how do I learn more faster? And one of the solutions was, if I write, then I have to sort of condense my thinking, not just to a memo, but to something that's public and that goes out to an audience of people who are a lot smarter than me. And that's a way for them to cross-reference, to fact check, to give me insights. And that was like mid 2022. And I started this newsletter with just such a bad name that I won't even say it.
Do I know it?
I hope not. I hope you don't remember it. It was bad.
I don't. It must have been that bad.
Proximity Fortnightly was the name of it.
No, yeah.
Which is so bad.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I shouldn't have told anyone. But that's what it used to be called. And it was just about like, what am I learning? What's a cool story? And I think I did this one post called The Paystack Mafia.
Yes, that was a huge post.
It's massive. Yeah.
I think, it's still like out there. I've seen a lot of people reference it.
And now like the Mafia, like same graphic is used, and everyone does like the thing. Like, but it's a really cool graphic that just explains like, okay, Paystack had this acquisition, and that spawned a lot of incredible founders and investors like yourselves, right? And I think that we compared Paystack to like PayPal, and that like it went viral. And the learning there was like, actually, like what's not being done is no one is actually telling Africa's tech story in a way that the rest of the world can really understand and resonate with.
From an African's perspective. Who's also on the ground.
And that's the advantage we have. It's like I grew up in Australia, and I've had to communicate like things on the ground to that audience who has like no understanding and honestly like not much interest either. So it's like, how do you make people across the world care and keep it as real as you can? And then that's when I was like, there's something missing here. So I started Tech Safari from that.
And I remember when we were speaking back then in January, or I think before then, you're always telling me that, you're writing. I'm like, this guy, all he does is write. So Tech Safari started. When did it start? And like the first 10,000, actually, no, the first 1,000 users. How quickly did it come? Like,
so like fortunately I'd built up a bit of like a few readers from Proximity Fortnightly. People actually subscribed even though it was called that. Crazy. Like 600 really desperate people to read it. But like I'd had a bunch from there. But I think like the decision to write and really give it a shot, I think it was around when we talked. It was in January. And I was thinking like, I'll try this for 3 months. We'll see what happens. If it can generate revenue, or if it can like show that there's real traction and need, I'll see if there's a way for me to keep doing this. And so it was January last year. First 1,000, I think it came after like, honestly, like a couple of weeks. Like I think we just had a few really nice first viral posts, which if that didn't happen, I don't know if I would have kept going. So I'm like really glad that we had a few wins. And then, I think it just kept like steadily growing as we told more stories. More people would engage, and then those people were fairly interested, so they keep engaging. And then now we're 18,000 in and like having a great time with it. Like
that's more than 1,000 followers or readers every month. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. We have a lot of people who are on Google Meet and LinkedIn. We'll be keen to know where you're dialing in from. So if you're on LinkedIn, just add in the comment. If you're on Meets, maybe just type in the comments as well where you're listening to this from. So Tech Safari, more than 1,000 readers are joining you per month, which is quite impressive. And then you decided to pack the bags and move to Nairobi. I remember you came through London. We did an event together. You carry your suitcases, and then boom, Nairobi. Why Nairobi out of all places?
Answer, not everyone loves the answer, but I think it's because I think in like 5 to 10 years, when you think about where people see the Africa opportunity and where they want to live, it's Nairobi. We have 4, like the big 4, right? So it's like Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa, and like Kenya.
It's like a cross, right?
It is
one big giant in each region.
It is. Exactly. It's like east, north, south, and west. Nigeria, like so much energy, but like I struggled like living there, to be honest. Like I found it like, yeah, it was tough. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But like I
So
love going
been.
back.
You've
Yeah,
spent
so
time
I
there.
actually traveled to most of these places
I remember
to
that.
decide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was weighing up like where do I want to live.
Mhm.
Before all of it was Ethiopia, but
Very interesting.
the situation changed there, so I found it like difficult to live there and stay there. And I wish I could have actually lived there, but yeah. Yeah, and then Egypt. I've never been, but like I feel like Egypt, like startups in Egypt, I'm not sure that they scale like sort of south. They're probably more likely to scale across, right, across MENA.
Yeah.
So like, is that like, you know, I'm not sure if it's the strongest sub-Saharan market, if that makes sense, or sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
And then South Africa, man, like I was in Cape Town. I was like, this is Australia. This is not like, like yeah, like I think if you're building a company in maybe not all of South Africa, but at least in Cape Town, it's like you probably have more affinity to scale that in London than you would in Kenya or like Nairobi. Yeah, because you're building like enterprise software, or you're building like it's just a much more developed ecosystem. So I'm like, whereas like truly Africa, but also a place where people would be like, yeah, I'd love to live there for a year or two or set up shop. And you look at where a lot of these big firms have set up too, it's here. A lot of big tech, and I think that will, like, Kenya will continue to like just sort of catch a lot of people trying to enter. So yeah, this is a good place to set up HQ for Tech Safari.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about challenges, opportunities. You've been writing for a while. You've invested across the ecosystem. You've hosted a ton of events.
Yeah.
What are the opportunities that you've seen, but also the challenges in the African ecosystem? I mean, I think maybe like 10 years ago, African ecosystem startup didn't go together in a sentence. But then it quickly, like overnight, things changed. Paystack, Flutterwave, we're talking unicorns. Like, if we look 5 years into the future, what do you think founders will be struggling with? And where do you see the ecosystem evolving?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think you're right. Like I don't know, even 2 years ago or like 3 years ago when I was really looking into it, I struggled to like get a grip of where was the ecosystem. Sorry, Daniel, you've come live on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you meant to do that. We can see Daniel on LinkedIn. Technical difficulties. Let me just yeah.
Thank you all for your patience. We'll resume very shortly.
Yeah, sorry. Can we go back to StreamYard? Sorry guys, technical difficulties. That's so weird. Let me just send him a message.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry guys. Okay, he's gone.
Good. Thank you, Daniel.
So weird. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think like ecosystem. I think like that it's getting easier to understand where the ecosystem is and where startups are, which is good. I think a lot of it was or at least what I know, like a lot of the excitement and the sort of interest I think came from 2021, right? And like 2022 as well, like the boom in funding. I think it's where like, you know, even investors like HoaQ, like you got your start. And I remember a lot of that had to do with like Paystack, right? Like,
when the acquisition
got that money. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, you know, there's a lot of excitement and like people who want to be involved in the ecosystem then. Right now we're in the opposite of that, where it's a really hard time. You know, it's like, it's really hard for startups to raise capital. I haven't seen a Series A round in a long time. Like
we haven't seen any this year.
Yeah. Well, like, even like how many did we have last year? Like probably a handful.
I think a lot of companies, I've spent a lot of time reading. I read a lot of investor reports, and many of them were so excited about raising a Series A in 2023.
Yeah. Didn't happen. Yeah. And the number of like pre-Series A's or post-seed or seed extension, it's just like the standard is like high. And there's actually, I would say, just from that boom, there's actually more scrutiny on Africa. It's like, is this real? If your investment was in a company, and honestly, most of our unicorns have raised at down rounds, right? Like have had to raise capital at down rounds. If you've seen a company you invested in Africa, it's you're a US fund or a UK fund, it's your first Africa investment, and it decreases by like, you know, like the valuation gets slashed to like 30%. It's like, that's going to taint your impression of Africa.
Yes.
And so I think we actually have more challenges now as an ecosystem.
Yeah.
In 5 years, I think the excitement will come back and like we'll sort of level set. But I do think like actually like our ecosystem is going through it and like it's not going to get easier. And so it's about like who are the actors who are A, here to stay, and then B, good actors. I think like I've been surprised by how much I've been able to do because like I'm just like I think when I started it, like and even like today, it's really just like how do we provide value? How do we be like a valuable resource in the ecosystem? You would be surprised how many of the VCs out here, how many founders out here, how many players here aren't good actors.
Good. So we have. Should we go straight into that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So it's evident that there are bad actors in the ecosystem. What needs to be done to essentially filter them out? What we need to be aware of is like every ecosystem has bad actors.
Of course.
So I don't think it's peculiar to the continent. What do we as the ecosystem folks need to do collectively to make sure that there are less bad actors and they don't get to the stage where they keep behaving poorly?
Totally. So like, yeah, I guess like one concept that I just want to sort of throw out there that I've been thinking about a lot, and then I can respond to it. But it's like because we already started at a disadvantage compared to like a US based startup or like on the global stage, right? Like there's a lot of talk about do we need like global VCs? We do for that growth stage money. It's very hard to scale a startup intentionally with just like African connections. Very hard. And so that means like we have like a almost like another burden or another layer that we have to prove. And I think like even just as Black people, right? Like we have that burden. And like I think that especially on the continent from the startups perspective, we have that too. So we actually have a responsibility to hold ourselves to a higher standard than our counterparts. That's what I believe. And that's why I think like going hard on people who are bad actors or who do shady stuff and like protecting people in your circle from like those actors is important. That's like my first thought. Then I think like the main thing is you call it out. Like you use your platform or like you make sure that it's known that there are bad actors if there are.
Let me just still man that piece for a second.
Cool.
What I've heard is, when you keep calling bad actors out, it's reflecting poorly on the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that travels to the West, meaning that people are now seeing that there's just a ton of bad actors because bad news travels very fast.
Yeah.
Like, how do we find a balance between that and also continuing to making sure that we protect the ecosystem?
Yeah.
And somehow spotlighting the bad actors while making sure that not everybody, it's like you do something bad and your mom takes you inside it to give you a little beating. Like, how do you do that in this?
I feel that like if all of our stories are about calling people out or like negative or like scrutinizing or failure, like which is also very normal. Failure is super normal. That doesn't need to be called like that. Congrats on like trying. I think that's like that. It's not like calling out failure. I think that it's because like a lot of that is news, right? Like a lot of that makes for a good story and it travels. But like we don't really like is African tech media doing the work to figure out like what's the actually phenomenal story that we have on the continent? Like what's the uplifting story? Who's like the founder who went through a bunch of shit, like went through a problem themselves? It's like not just I wanted a dog walking app or something. It's like no, actually I had a real problem in my community I wanted to solve. How do we tell those stories?
Properly.
Exactly.
Right.
In a real way, in like in a no bullshit way. And I think it's just like, it feels like, yes, there's a lot of negative stories, but it's because we're not doing the work to highlight the positive ones. And I think at Texify, that's a lot of our thesis. Like we have a team now, it's not just me. And like a lot of our thinking is like, how do we celebrate and talk about the uniquely African story without just saying Africa's the best? Like, we want to call out reality, but like, that's a big part of what we do. And so I think with that, we have sort of earned the right to be like, okay, we're going to call out bullshit when it happens as well.
What is one bullshit you've called out recently?
I had this article that like people still give me shit about today. And I think it was an interesting one. It was called The African CEO.
African CEO? Okay,
yeah. Does the African CEO have what it takes?
Oh.
Yeah. And we called out like a lot of the people who raised or who really struggled, right? I think the whole year, I remember it was the start of like 2024, and like I was going to do a piece on like, oh, it's like really hard to raise a round right now. And I was like, actually, that everyone's everyone's saying that.
It's okay, you can curse.
Everyone is saying the same thing. It's like hard economic conditions, unprecedented times, lack of growth. It's like actually like, sure, but like, has anyone asked the question, like, are these people capable of doing that job?
So it's not the fact that it's actually hard to raise money. Do they have the capabilities to raise money? Do they have what it takes to actually raise the money?
Yeah.
Considering that they have the right metrics.
Exactly.
And like having the right metrics gives them that capability.
Yeah.
Is that
exactly?
Okay.
Yeah. And does a starry-eyed founder who builds a company and is like at uni, can he manage $50 million? Right? Like, like
50 people.
Yeah, or 50 people. Yeah. Like I don't like we need to ask those questions. And I think we called out people, like we called out like people who had been in positions and had struggled. And I think a lot of people didn't like that because they're like, why are you beating on our CEOs? I'm like, bro, like every day I like talk about a new CEO doing something cool. But it was to be like to scrutinize. And I think what I really liked was a lot of VCs and a lot of founders came up to me and were like, hey, like, thank you for this. I think a lot of people had been thinking this, a lot of like, especially growth stage VCs were thinking this, but no one had said it. And so, yeah, that's an example. Yeah.
How do we close the gap
between in which,
like, a founder who needs to raise and what they need to do to raise? Like, how do we, is it education?
Yeah.
Is it like experience? Because you and I have invested in a company who failed. And I think we can all collectively agree that the founder just didn't have what it takes.
Totally.
Plus the market went against them. And when the market went against them, it didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So like, is it an experience issue? Is it an education issue? Like, how do we close that gap?
I like that question. There's probably two things. Like one is just a concept again, and then the other is like a straight up answer. I think the straight up answer is like, firstly, like what are the benchmarks? Like what does it mean to, so, we know that Series A is the biggest gap, seed to Series A, biggest gap. And if you can raise a Series A, generally your chances of success go up like a lot more than it would between pre-seed and seed, right? And so, like, what does it mean to raise a Series A as an African startup? Like, we haven't defined that. No one's gone and talked to all the funds to be like, hey, how much would you, like, what revenue do you expect? What sort of traction, what team?
I mean, we know what it takes to raise a Series A, right? Are you saying
in 2021 and 2022?
No, actually, no. Like, there's very clear metrics for a Series A.
Are there?
Right? Yeah. I mean, you need to have X amount of revenue, probably between 300K and 500K annual. You need to have a certain type of growth.
Series
rate.
A.
Yeah.
Series A benchmarks are like at least 2 million annualized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's about like 1.160, 170.
Yeah.
And you need to be growing
monthly.
at a certain rate. Like, is it a thing where a lot of the founders just are not aware? Like, for example, one thing I saw last year and early this year is one of our portfolio companies doing great, except they didn't reach that 10 million benchmark to raise the Series B. And nobody would give them money because, like, having that 10 million in revenue is the starting point to raise the Series B. Yeah. So, like, I wasn't mad that they couldn't raise the money because I'm like, the numbers on the wall. If you don't reach these numbers, nobody's going to talk to you. Yeah. Is that sort of education needed, especially for Africa? And we need to actually review these metrics because, especially in Africa, it's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
So, like, is that what we need?
That's the other point. It's like, we have benchmarks. And like, if you look up, I think, I forgot which fund does it. There's a great fund that has like a really good list of Series A benchmarks and they sort of update them each year. But that's for the US. Like, who's done that for the continent, right? And who's done that for like Nigeria versus like Kenya? Like, who's done that like in-depth research? I think that's really important. That's the sort of stuff we're trying to do at Tech Safari as well. But I'm really curious about that because I think now we have a really strong standard and we're like, this is generally what we expect. Founders can take that home and be like, okay, this is how I need to think about things. So I think that's the first one. Like, it's just knowing what does it mean to bridge that gap as a founder. The second is, I think that like, I think we're like, the concept is like, there's waves of like startups, right? Like in every ecosystem. And like in like different ecosystems, the first wave generally just like fails. They try to figure it out in a new market and they don't. And we have examples of that, right?
All the e-commerce companies in 2015.
Yeah, like, oh, let's do Amazon in Africa, like, and it's like, fair enough, like good play, good on you for trying. But like, but it's like understanding a model and like learning from the failures of the past and even the wins from the past to be like, this is what good product looks like.
Yeah.
This is what works on the continent. A lot of today's e-commerce companies and like today's like even like logistics companies and like everyone in that realm owes a lot to Jumia. Like they built a lot of infra. They brought a lot of investment here. They trained a lot of people. I dunk on them all the time, but like but still like they did a lot. And I think it's this idea of waves. So I think bridging the gap generally comes in waves and comes from like realism and like understanding what's needed, what works, and sort of marrying the two and finding really strong founders who are keen to build those companies.
This is great. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
So for folks who are on, the meets, I just want to know that we're good. Give me a thumbs up. Give me some emojis. People who are on LinkedIn, leave us some comments. Feel free to share this with your audience. I hope you're enjoying it. I think this conversation has been long due between the two of us.
Yeah.
Conscious of time, I think we're just past the hour. This was supposed to be for an hour. I'm gonna ask one or two questions, and then we actually got some questions from the audience before this.
Oh, nice.
So I'll just run through them real quickly. But talking about fundraising in this current market, advice to founders who need to raise. What do they need to do to get across the line, regardless of the stage that they're raising at?
Yeah, I think today the word I hear all the time is profitability. Seriously,
stay alive.
Yeah, 2022, no one is talking about that.
I didn't even know
like one company I think we both invested in was like, yeah, we're profitable. I was like, damn, that's great. This is like my first or second deal on the continent. I was like, oh, that's great. We'll talk about it. Yeah, I don't know if they're profitable today. But I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then like today I'm like, wow, thank God you did that, because like they're in a great place and they don't require any investor funding, right? I think if you have something that's real and you I think if you have something that's real and you want to keep growing it, like you need to figure out the balance between like staying frugal and dropping your costs and also growth. And if you can do that, then you have optionality. Like I also know a founder who cut his team because he's like, okay, I want the optionality to I know that I can keep going the way it is, but I'll be reliant on VC money in 12 months or in 8 months. And I don't want that. So I'm just going to have that optionality and bring it to profitability. And I think that's actually really important. Just being able to say, hey, if we want to, we don't need you. Because that's when you get screwed on deals. When a VC's like, oh yeah, cool. Take this 2 million val, even though you raised it 10 before. Maybe not like that, but I think it's kind of like that.
I had a tough conversation like that today.
Huh? You were trying to give the 2 mil val.
No.
Yeah.
So I'll speak to.
Well, tell me after.
So stay alive.
Yeah. So have profitability in your plans.
Okay.
And even if you can't do it on this round, figure out how do you get to that in the next round. I think you don't need to be profitable, but you need to show that if shit hits the fan, you can get there and stay alive. Then the next is it's really underrated, but it's build trust. It's basic, but it's build trust. And so how do you build trust? People invest in things that they understand and that they are familiar with. Generally, right? And it's and even if you have an unfamiliar idea or you're an unfamiliar person, there are still ways you can build trust, and that's through being proactive to meet investors, doing that through your connections. One of the great ways that I've been seeing more and more people do this is actually audience building. It's what I do.
Okay.
I think if you build an audience and you talk about a specific thing and you become the domain expert for fintech, Wizard Jalakasi, for instance, I'd give him money to start something. You know Wizard, right?
Except Wizard he said he claims to be a very bad investor, and he doesn't want to go build a startup because he really enjoys being an operator. But that's
okay. But my point, I get, We'll take that up with him. I think he's we've invested with him, so I'd hope he's a good investor.
It does. No, so he's actually you can't talk about fintech in Africa without mentioning Wizard.
If you think about people and fintech in Africa, which means if that guy is hey, I want to start a company that does this because I've learned this from my experience, I'm investing in that person.
Yeah, I'll give Wizard money.
And
I'll give Wizard money. Whatever you want to build.
Yeah, because I think he'd have the insight to do it and the connections to do it.
Okay.
And it's kind of how do you build a Wizard? he did start a company, but I think a lot of that goodwill, he's consistently talking about what he's doing. He's not just holding roles, he's out there in the public. And so if you do that in your domain, you hold a space on the internet that actually gives you a lot of credibility. It builds trust without you ever meeting people. I think about that now when we try to work with companies, do partnerships, and sell with Tech Safari. A lot of these people might not know me, but they know me. They've been reading the newsletter, and so that builds rapport. And I think that's a really underrated thing the founders should do more of.
Anything else?
I don't know. I think just think critically about the stage you're at. Investing. I actually saw one of your clips about this, but investing is momentum. It's about momentum, and it's sometimes when you start, you start real slow, and it takes time. But I think understanding, okay, when is someone about to make a decision? How do we sort of use levers to accelerate this, or to build up hype, not in a negative sense, but really just show that hey, this is what's happening, this is the interest, and you sort of build on investors. And so I think starting with the people will invest is good. So angels, small funds, communities like ours, and then growing into the VCs, I think is a good way to do it. Okay. Yeah.
So build an audience. Don't die. That's what I've been saying to founders. You can't raise money if you're not alive.
Yeah.
So don't die. And the third one is, remind me again.
Momentum. So when you go to raise, build momentum.
Yeah.
And be strategic. Think about the raise, how long it will take, who you're going to talk to.
Realistically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Raises always take longer. Oh my God, they take ages these days. So much longer.
Yeah, I'm supposed to go raise money soon, but
hey, put it on hold.
Newbie was telling me
profitable instead.
Newbie was telling me this morning that I should take my own advice on the momentum piece.
Build momentum. Yeah.
And so before I go to the questions, what was one question that you wanted me to ask you today that I did not ask you?
Oh, that's a good question. I like that question. Man, I don't know. I think I don't have a specific question.
Okay.
It would have been really cool if we could do I think generally a post-mortem session
on
companies just any companies that didn't go well. I feel there's not enough of that. We've been thinking about doing a post-mortem series, so figuring out why did the startup fail and go behind the scenes on it. Not in a
company for you.
Okay.
Of course I have companies for you.
Okay, cool.
Companies.
Yeah, so we're on live stream, so we can't say it out loud, but afterwards. I think a postmortem session that a postmortem thing where you dive into what happened at the company, you get the founder in to talk about it, and you just
you get the founders to talk about it.
Yeah.
We actually did something similar with Zazu on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, and it wasn't supposed to be that, but the question came up, and Kay, the founder, was just super candid about what happened. And I think just respect to Kay, because it's a very tough thing to talk about.
Was this the logistics? The logistics one?
No, it's a fintech in the UK.
Okay.
And he was just very frank about
yeah.
And even so, we wanted to do a live session, and there's two founders that we invited, and both have had to shut down the company.
Wow. Was that planned?
It wasn't, because we booked this thing months ago.
Damn.
And yeah, it was super candid, and sometimes it just sobers you up.
Yeah.
About where we are, what we're doing, and how challenging this can be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite challenging.
Yeah.
But I think it was worth it. So that you now hear from the founder, and again, founders who are just honest about this is what happened.
Yeah.
You would want to give them money again to go try out something.
Well, yeah. Well, it depends, but mostly. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Being candid and upfront about why you fail is one of the biggest. If you can accurately look at that, it's really powerful. But also there's a class of founders who are about to start companies, have started companies, or are really struggling, and they're how do I do this with grace? How do I navigate these challenges?
Yeah.
We always talk about the challenges to fundraise, or it's build a team, but what about actually shutting down, or deciding about that?
I pray that I never have to get there. But if I have to get there, I'll hopefully do it with grace.
Yeah, 100%.
So I have a couple
I always
questions.
forget that you're actually like, you're not just an investor, you're also a founder with platform.
You know, I think I've been an entrepreneur for a long time and I just didn't know it.
Hmm.
My first job, well, no, my second proper job was to help build a department
Mhm.
in a bank.
Right.
This was in 2014. And throughout my entire career, I don't think I've held the same job twice.
Hmm.
And most of the jobs I go into is like it's a brand new role. I'm
Mhm.
setting things up. So part of me, and this is not a platform conversation.
Yeah.
Part of me feels like everything is kind of converging to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a blessing in disguise.
Mm.
And yeah,
It's awesome. It's awesome seeing that experience like stack up to. It's almost like, it's actually interesting. It's like, you know, especially when you're doing early stage investments, it's like you're looking at market and founder.
Yes.
And so it's like, what about the founder adds up to this startup? And so you look at their history to find that out. And I think that's like, it's cool that you have that. Yeah.
And the good news is, I think I've gone through about 1,000 techs at this stage.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody build this. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
if I don't build it, I don't know if somebody will. They'll build a version of it.
Mm.
But the way I'm thinking about it, yeah, I don't think anybody will.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
it's,
good.
Maybe it's my ego talking.
So good. No. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, so I have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, let's do it.
And also, I'm just going to check on Google Meet to see if we have some questions.
Mhm.
So if you have questions, please put them in the comments. It's going to be hard to hear people. So just type them in there. We'll try to take maybe 2 or 3 questions.
Okay.
Let's do this speed, quick.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you good?
So, yeah.
All right, so
How are we going for time?
We have 15 minutes.
Okay.
So how do you feel about gaming in Africa?
I think I saw this question.
Okay.
I think it's big. I think it's like a big opportunity. I would love to learn more about it. I'm curious. Yeah, actually, I don't know enough about it, but I think it's massive. Like you think about like the number of people who have mobile phones, especially young people, and like this generation only knows mobile, right? Like the current generation. So it's going to be really big. Question is like, where is the value in it? Is it being the studio? Is it like being like a payment gateway? Is it like building your own games? I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I think it's massive. Yeah.
Okay. I've got another question.
This is very quick fire.
Yeah, quick. Ooh. The good, the bad, and ugly about regulations in Africa.
Damn. I'll start with like, I'm not the guy to answer this question.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we've seen a lot of things happen, especially in Nigeria.
Yeah.
This week, last week.
Crazy.
It's been
It's
wild.
crazy. Well, I think like the good and the bad, but it's all of it, right? Like I would say is generally on the whim. You know, like we think about like a democratic process and like a lot of thought and effort that goes into this stuff. Like sometimes and in some cases, yes. In a lot of cases, just like, no, I don't like you, so let's turn this off. I'm serious, man. Like, and I've seen enough of my portfolio just deal with that, right?
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it also means it means that like companies need to build with like that in mind, or that sort of like factored into how they build. So you build and you hire someone who is like your policy person, right? And they know how to maneuver or how to build this company with you. So I think there's a point where scale, or like there's an industry where like you can't scale unless you have someone who just deals with it. And you look at the founders of like, especially the companies that have done really well here, they're some of the most well-connected people on the continent. They're not just founders. They're actually like extremely tapped. Yeah. And they can get past a lot of this stuff. So
why are you saying to founders that they should get plugged and connected?
Yeah, like understand who makes decisions and how to work around them. And like, and you know, even better, like one company in our portfolio, like, like managed to get, instead of being like scrutinized, managed to get the regulator on their side to help promote them. And that's like, there's ways you could, or like help like, like sort of validate them as a solution to one of their problems. So there's like creative ways you can do that. But unfortunately, it's like a who you know game, which makes it both a good thing and a bad thing.
I have a question from the Google Meets, and that is
nice.
How much emphasis do you put on startup business model, like distribution, partnerships, versus quality / innovation of tech?
Interesting. I like that. So like distribution or growth versus like tech, or like product. I'm definitely more on the growth side. I think that's all I've known. I'm not a very product person. and very much like, do you have something unique and how much can you distribute it? Because I think like also like a lot of the startups here are not like high tech solutions to stuff. It's just like
Tech-enabled.
one of my portfolio companies is like, hey, we just know how to distribute insurance really well, and we built a bit of tech that helps us do it really efficiently. Like that's it. We're an insurance broker. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need
a bit of tech.
Yeah, with a bit of tech, obviously. Yeah, there's tech used to like distribute, and like they use now. I think tech is a bigger part, but it's like the tech doesn't matter. It's like how much can you sell it. And then I think in some cases where if you're doing ag tech, right, you actually need a really strong product.
Yeah.
We need a really strong like process or system. Or logistics, right? Logistics is tough. I think we've seen a lot of companies that just do like the connection, like, okay, you need to get a truck and like, you know, this is like the company or whatever, like connecting those. That's not, you probably need more of a tech product there that actually solves a problem. But like, yeah, but I put more emphasis on how do you grow this thing rather than like, what's the product?
Huh.
Yeah. And I think execution just smashes product all the time.
Can I answer my version of it?
Please. Yeah. I know you're a product person.
I break it down to two parts. Right?
Yeah.
I think 0 to 1 is product / experimentation, and 1 to 10 is scale. So like for a while you're talking to your customers, trying to learn more about what they need, you take that feedback and productize it. And then once you've figured out what that looks like from end to end, and then you scale. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. So
yeah, I love it.
I'm loving it.
That's awesome. Actually, you're right. I think even like Tech Safari isn't a traditional startup, but it's a company, right? And so we have a handful of products. And like it did take a year to figure out what are those products and like what makes people click and what would people pay for. And then now it's like scale. So I think that's true. Yeah.
Usually I'll go to the end and ask you to pitch, tell us about Tech Safari, but I'm going to do it right now.
I've already done it. The whole session's been like a Tech Safari. Long Tech Safari promo.
Like how can people find you? People who are watching this or people who watch this.
Yeah.
How can they buy your services? And like, what do they look like? Because we haven't really got into, like how you make the dough.
Yeah, sure. So
I don't think a lot of people actually understand it, right?
Yeah. So just read Tech Safari, like check it out. Mostly on my LinkedIn, so Caleb Maru or techsafari.io. I think like I don't really want to sell anything. It's more like just read the newsletter, and if you like it, then that's great. And if you enjoy it and you want like something like that, then we can like explore that. So the way that we help companies though is like in a handful of ways. Like one is we have like we're a media company, so we do paid editions, right? So sponsored editions where we dive into a story of like something, but it's weird because you wouldn't tell. Like if you read it, you'd be like, this is a cool story. But you learn about something new and you learn about like a new product or like a new company in that way. So that's like one. And then I think another way is events. We'd throw events all across the continent.
Yeah. When are we doing another event again?
Soon, hopefully soon.
I heard you're going to be in Paris.
In Paris?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah, wait, who told you? What? I'm not anymore.
My job
I'm
is
not
to
anymore.
know things on the continent.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah, I'm not anymore. I'll be at JTEX.
Yeah.
And I'll be in London.
Okay, good.
So yeah.
They're kind of like very close to each other.
Yeah, but JTEX and VivaTech are at the same time. So I had to choose. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll be involved in JTEX, which would be cool.
I'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah, so events. So, like next week I'm going to Cape Town and I'm going to do an event there, and then in Nigeria and Ghana. So we do events, like in-person meetups. And then, a big side now is also like we help companies actually grow their marketing teams and scale them. So like we'll sit within a company and be like, hey, like we think you can grow. We think that like you could use events or partnerships or like content to help grow this side of your business. Doesn't work for everyone, but there's some companies that sell to other companies that really need a hand with this. And I think our mission is like, how do we help more? How do we be behind the next set of like really important African companies? And I think one of the biggest gaps is like once you have the product, how do you scale that? And we're pretty good at that. Like we do that all the time through Tech Safari.
Hence, you take the scale side and I take the product side.
Yeah.
We can call the podcast, product and scale.
Product and
I know.
Product, yeah.
It's not as bad as your first.
Yeah, it's not as bad. It could use some work though. But let's jam on it. Yeah.
Last question. To close this thing off is what are your thoughts on the media landscape on the continent since you're now in the media space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like we have a lot of actors who do great work. Like, you know, we need like a reporting layer where people just know what's happening and what's going on. So that's important. But I think it needs to evolve, right? Like it needs to move beyond, it has to go beyond this startup raised this much, this company shutting down, this startup launched this product. It needs to evolve past that. And we don't have enough writers who are doing that. Like we try to fill that gap. That's like really important for us because we think that like a better narrative is going to be important for our continent. But I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is like, there's a shift. People don't care about brands as much as they do about people, especially on social media platforms. And so I think like the next wave of like content creators or like African tech will just be people, not like brands.
Not companies.
Yeah.
Isn't that where the whole shit is going? Like people are now brands?
Yeah. Exactly.
Have you seen my newsletter? I actually plugged your newsletter in my newsletter.
When? Is this the HoaQ newsletter or Joe's?
No, it's my personal newsletter.
Damn, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Send it to me. Yeah.
No.
You never shared it with me. I could have helped you, man. I could have given advice.
I got you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that was the last question, but it wasn't
Sure.
the last question. Now we have something on AI, which is this is from.
Wait, sorry. I feel like can we also after that check the LinkedIn stream because I feel like we might have.
I'm not sure how we can even
comments. Yeah, no one asked any questions.
Oh, how cool is this? Yeah. Oh yeah, you know Goodman. Goodman. Yeah,
he's my boy. We should have him on for media. Like he's doing great. He's doing amazing African media.
Actually,
he's like he's probably my favorite. Yeah, I think he's my favorite content creator.
So an organization that I found a couple of years ago, they do like this Lions Den competition.
Yeah,
he won that last year.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was there.
That's awesome.
It was so dope. Like his presentation was just out of this world.
That's amazing.
Did
he use like his signature graphics as well? And
it was pretty swanky.
Hey man, he's so good.
Dope.
I want to work with him more. Yeah.
And then so AI sector in Africa, there's not much about it. What could be the challenge scaling up the solutions? Yeah, because like
I think it's go ahead. It's more like how do you embed AI into like existing problems? Less about like, oh, I want to build an AI company that does this, so it makes this easier. It's like, no, actually, like, how do you like? We did a piece on this. It's like, can you apply AI to solve like problems that like the average person or the average business faces? So like, there's a company called Letta, right? And they use like AI to.
They're a portfolio company, right?
No, but we help, like we know them pretty well. Okay. And so like they use AI to like optimize like routes. So like how like someone moves from A to B. Because like it's super inefficient, right? Like it's like truckers are like, oh, I think I go here, then here, then here. But like actually we use AI to figure out like the fastest route for all the locations. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's probably going to be more of less of like we're building AI tools. It's more like actually like we're embedding that into other products that we're building. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But I don't think there will be like an AI sector, like an AI like there would be like an open AI or like companies like that in the US. InstaDeep is the exception, but I think InstaDeep, different. That's a different company.
So it's gonna be like AI enabled startups.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe can I coin that? Is that thing?
Which one? AI enabled. Yeah, you can take it, man. So
I'm taking it.
Use a new newsletter.
This has been great. Thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it over to my team to take it from here. And we have a couple of announcements. I hope this was useful for people who want to learn more about Caleb. He's quite active on LinkedIn. He posts a couple of times a week. It's like Caleb Maru. Caleb also runs Tech Safari, techsafari.io. Yeah, and you can join his newsletter. I read it every week. It's great. You also send them on Saturdays. I like the Saturday ones.
The roundups, yeah.
Okay, it's the roundups, right?
Yeah,
actually has a lot of content.
Yeah.
And for folks who don't know who we are and you watch on LinkedIn, my name is Joe Kinvi. I am one of the community managers at HoaQ, HoaQ, HoaQ.co, and we help folks become investors or angels across Africa and the diaspora. All right, so thank you all. I'll pass it over to Folakemi to round you up, and we'll close it from here. So thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Joe. Okay, thank you, Caleb Maru, as well. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us your knowledge. So now to HoaQ update. Next slide. Yes, HoaQ 2024 deals are still open. They're open till the end of the quarter. We've done Meet the Founder sessions for most of these deals, and you can find the recording of these sessions on platform. So if you've not checked out the deals, please go ahead and check them out. And we have some upcoming Meet the Founder sessions as well. For next week, we have pipe ups. So please watch out for the link and register to join. Next slide, please. Yes, HoaQ just finally became a member of ABAN. So we've posted about what it's going to be about on our LinkedIn.